Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Sutton, agenda item number 8C.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approves the attached resolution regarding grant application or Consolidated Housing and Community Development Plan.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Giannatasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mayor Blake. Mayor Blake, can you share with the members of the board what some of the handicap improvements throughout the city that are going to be earmarked for this grant once we receive the money?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Giannatasio. So Milford is an entitlement community. We receive approximately $500,000 for our normal community development block grant through HUD each year. And we have a committee. The administrator for this is Sheila Dravis. Sheila, do you mind coming to the podium while I give a brief overview? And generally, and obviously there's a host of stringent requirements about how this federal money can be used for. For general purposes, you know, the CDBG grant is one of the most wildly successful federal grants in the history of federal grants because it gives the municipalities the ability to target where the money should go and needs to go. It needs to go, per the requirements of the grant, to low-mod areas for the most part. Low-mod is low to moderate income people. There are some other ways that the grant asks municipalities to spend the money through handicap accessibility, through ADA improvements, as well as you know, small businesses that are, you know, targeted as well. But in terms of the grant, a portion of it, a small portion of it, is allowed to be utilized for programming, but the majority is geared towards structural improvements, capital projects. We've used that in the past for things like the Housing Authority. We've used it for you know, things like fire trucks in low to moderate areas. You know, for example, the rescue truck that we purchased a few years ago that is housed at the Nugget Fire Station, a low to moderate area. We could also use it for playgrounds and other city infrastructure projects in low to moderate areas, or we've used it for ADA accessibility in places like the Parsons Complex, doors and ramps to allow ADA accessibility. We've used it at the library, doors and entrances. The big ADA accessibility project that we reserve each year, however, Alderman Giannatasio, is for our sidewalks and our handicap ramps. Handicap ramps, we always set aside a certain amount each year to make improvements, you know, throughout the city. So as we're doing sidewalk work, we also allow a portion of that sidewalk work to be covered by this grant because it does allow for ADA accessibility for our sidewalks.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, my interest is in the handicap accessibility, what projects are earmarked. I just recently saw on the news that there's these pathways that can be put on the shoreline, being that we're a shoreline town where the handicap can access the beaches. Are we working towards doing that through this grant? Maybe not this specific grant that's in front of us tonight, but maybe in the future. There was a news up in Waterford, Connecticut today, where the governor was, and they talked about handicap accessibility to beaches. And they have these concrete slabs where you can go onto a wheelchair and you could, you know, view the beach. I don't believe that Milford has that at this point. So I'm looking forward to possibly implementing that. So my question is specific to the handicap portion of this grant. What are we doing with this money, or how much money, and do we have any projects that are earmarked for handicap accessibility specifically?
So in terms of beach accessibility, over by the west end of Walnut Beach at the Meg Casey Pavilion, there is, I believe it's referred to as Brian Wynn's Access Way. And probably one of the 3rd District alder persons like Connie Gaynor can give you more of the history, but it was a handicapped area that was established to allow accessibility down to the beach for people that needed accessibility help. I do think that what you're referring to is one of those magic carpets or those ramps made out of concrete are something that we need to replace. So I think we'll probably do it through our recreation department. They have looked into that in the past and have purchased those in the past. And in terms of installing a new one, either at Walnut Beach or Gulf Beach or Anchor Beach or one of the other public beaches, probably will look towards them, just because I don't know if it fits the threshold for a handicap accessible project. It's less money unless we tackle it a different way and makes big structural changes. But Sheila, can you give us a little bit of additional insight in terms of some of the things that are planned for the accessibility portion of the grant?
Certainly. You've really covered a lot of it, though, Mayor Blake. Thank you. So specifically, a couple years back, I think probably 7 or 8, the rec department did receive some funding for the ADA mat that rolls out, and that's taken out during the season, and it's there. It's not permanent. So in that way, I think it's much more. It's looking at the environment. I think something permanent, I don't know if there's anything down there now, but it would be something that the Public Works would look into, and we could fund it because it is ADA. It's specific to accessibility, so that is our only leeway to not being in a low mod area, is if it's specific to an ADA accessible project. So that can be funded. And curb cuts are common every year. And they're tacked on to all of the sidewalks, no matter where they are in the city.
Mr. Chairman, through you, this mat that you're referring to, is this moved around the city or is it, where does it,
No, my
at
understanding
this
is
time?
it's only been at Walnut Beach. That's my understanding. And it is going back a couple years, so I assume it's still, in shape to be rolled out. But I can inquire with the rec department as well.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we're making a conscious effort towards, making things more handicap accessible, especially the beach.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree. And public facilities.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any more discussion? Alderman Wynn Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. I see that this resolution has some wording in it. It says community development plan. So I guess my question would be, of the $533,000, could any of that be used to fund any of the items in your capital improvement plan that you presented to the board?
I don't believe so, no. Just looking through these again. No, there's a committee that meets in the winter, and they narrow it down based on the requests from different organizations, nonprofits in the greater Milford area. And the majority of the money, the vast majority of the money, has to be used for capital improvements, but it's generally, other than some city-sponsored capital improvements, it's capital improvements for nonprofit agencies, things like enhancements to the Bethel Center or Boys and Girls Club, or the Literacy Volunteer Center. Actually, that's actually those are programming dollars, but Milford Transit District, some of the agencies that the city partners with, profits, they depend on some of this funding to make capital improvements to their operations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, just the only thing that I could think of would be the money that's reserved for ADA accessible curb cuts and handicap ramps. Each year in our capital improvement plan, we have a area for sidewalks and asphalt management. So I guess out of all those things, the only area that there'd be some overlap would be the DPW public improvements for accessibility.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chairman, actually, if I could just follow up through you. So are you able to then use these monies for items on the capital improvement plan, or no? There's just some overlap there.
So the answer would be yes, if those items on the capital improvement plan were in low mod areas. There's a map of Milford, and the Housing and Urban Development folks draw, based on census tracts, draw little circles or ovals on the Milford maps, and those are the areas that we can make public improvements, or we can make public improvements that are related to accessibility. So those are the only two ways that we can utilize this funding for infrastructure updates.
Interesting. And through you, Mr. Chairman, then if they circled an area and said this is an area that would need some sort of capital improvement, you could potentially, say, build a welcome center for, $500,000 if it happened to be in that specific area?
We receive $500,000 each year, and a portion of that has to be used for programming, and a portion has to be used for capital improvements. I don't know if that helps you, but again, there's a process where nonprofits are invited to solicit or apply for the funding, and at the end, a committee composed of a whole bunch of community folks, and Sheila can outline the members of the committee. They meet and they go through and they interview each of the nonprofit agencies, and they discuss their needs as well as city needs to determine how best to utilize this annual funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through you, so the answer to that would be yes. You could potentially use that for a welcome center.
If it fits the criteria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the mayor. Mr. Mayor, staying with the handicap accessibility piece, and it may not be related to the grant, but with the existing curb cuts in the center of town that have been reworked by whom, can you elaborate on what was happening with all that?
Mr. Chair, through you to Alderman Vitale, that was not locally funded, locally planned. That was all the Connecticut State Department of Transportation. It was part of a broader project. Some of the priorities did not match with local city priorities. It was all on a state highway, which is New Haven Avenue. And I guess there was a portion of it that bled over to North Broad, which is a city road. But because it connected with a state highway, the State Department of Transportation started this project and is still working on this project ad infinitum, that it just seems like it's going on for months and months and months. The project initially started, I think, 10 months ago, and then they started digging up those curb cuts along New Haven Ave in front of the library, in front of North Broad and South Broad, probably about 6 weeks ago, and it's still just a mess. So we have many calls into the State Department of Transportation, and we're still working on it. We're pushing them. We did push them to make it safe in preparation for the kickoff of the summer fireworks, especially that area over by the library where there are a lot of pedestrians that utilize, that four-way intersection. But it is a project that is taking way too long, and it frustrates myself.
Just to follow up, I mean, it looked like an exercise in how slow can you get the job done. What was wrong with the existing curb cuts? It even looks worse. It looks like there's a greater dip in angle or at those curb cuts at this point. But we do have a state representative here. Maybe he can make some difference in Hartford going up on Wednesday and talk about it. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, it just seemed it was ridiculous that the amount of time that they were working on it and how slowly can you get the project done was, that I guess is a vision of what the state has to offer at this point. Thank you for your comment.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? Alderman Marlowe.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. Mayor, I'm looking through the list here of basically 15 activities or things that you're allocating or thinking of allocating the money to. And my question is just on the last one, the grant administration and planning, and we're allocating about 106,000. Could you just tell me what's in that?
Mr. Chairman, that's the grant administration. We're allowed to allocate up to, I believe, 20%, Sheila, and that covers the cost of the administrator's salary and the benefits, as well as the other folks that work in Sheila's department that work on the CDBG grant each year. And there's other folks in that too. There are consultants that are hired out of this money. There are contractors that are hired out of this money that go into the administrative fee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alderman.
Any other discussion on the motion? Alderman Frank Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, through you to the board, but specifically to Alderman Vitale, I am working all the time with the Department of Transportation, both reluctantly and actively on a number of projects. So I will certainly get with the mayor to discuss what we just discussed with regard to Upper New Haven Avenue. I'm also working on trying to get cleanup along 95 between exits 34 and Devon all the way up to the Connecticut Post. There's been a number of people in the condominiums there have been complaining about trash that's collected on both sides of 95, which is both state properties. In fact, Public Works Director Saley and I visited with some of the residents of that area. So if there is any DOT stuff or obviously anything else state related, please feel free to contact me directly on that.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alderman Sutton, agenda item number 8D.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the attached resolution regarding grant application for Consolidated Housing and Community Development Plan, CARES Act.
Second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Excuse me?
We had some comments.
Alderman Parente.
Thank you. Through you, Chairman, if I could ask the administrator, could someone summarize for us the way in which this is different than the other grant that you're administering over 4 or 5 years, and just give us an idea of the way in which this money will be allocated? Thank you.
Sure, of course. So the CARES Act funding is the second grant out of the 2 that we received in fiscal year 20. It constitutes a substantial amendment. The money is specifically to prepare and respond to the impact of COVID, whether it's economic, whether it's health, whether it's housing. So that funding, and it's administered differently. It's an open application versus an annual application. So anybody who comes in who's eligible, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit. So we offer business loans to micro-enterprise, 5 and under, and over 6 to 30 for businesses, as well as childcare. If you're, it really runs the gamut. It's the homeless shelter. We funded meals delivery with the first tranche. We've done a housing specialist diversion, which is to assist the homeless shelter with placing people, which has been very valuable because during COVID, you don't want anybody on the street. You don't want them unhoused. What else have we used it for? Literacy, the Boys and Girls Clubs, so they can buy, each organization can buy either equipment to keep their facility clean, or they can hire somebody to do that in excess of their regular staff. This is all allowable with this specific grant. Yep.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? Alderman Wynn-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through you, I just wanted to piggyback off what Alderman Marlowe had mentioned earlier, and he was talking about the grant administration and planning for $106,069. I do see, and I understand that that could be used for salaries, benefits, and items of that nature. There is another line item down here, again, for the same title under grant administration and planning, and that's for an additional $60,748. What would that be used for if the 106 is being used for benefits and salaries and items such as that?
That's for additional staff, additional consultants, additional contractors.
So whenever we see, through you, Mr. Chairman, whenever we see grant administration and planning, that'll be what that is solely allocated towards, nothing else.
Yes, Sheila, is there anything else that it would be allocated for?
Planning covers the overhead to put out notices. So with the CARES Act funding specifically, we've done a lot of marketing of the programs, more so than we would specifically about the funding, so that we can try to expend it and help people. So there's been an additional push for that. And it's quite a, postage and notices and brochures and copyings is actually pretty expensive. So, but that's a normal overhead regardless of which grant you're looking at, that's included. The cost of advertising, the cost of supplies. I help, the grant balances off the office's expenses for things like that. So that's included as well in program administration.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through you, so that's a new item, I guess, that was in here that I didn't know what was in there. I thought it was personnel and salary and benefits. So it does include marketing costs, advertising costs, sounds like maybe some other costs as well?
Cost of doing business with a grant, yeah.
Okay, okay, interesting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Beatty.
Yes, through you to the grant administrator, thank you. Clarification on Alderman Smith's question. My understanding, grant administration and the advertising was that there was a lag in the public knowing that there were funds for COVID, that they could be accessed, and there was a considerable amount, a learning curve for both the people who would be recipients, agencies, and personnel to reach out to spend that money within the required period of time. So when you say advertising and marketing, it diminishes what really was a public service. Is that correct?
So we're noticing the grant to the public. That's, it's different than a public service. But yes, it's actually a public service, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, the grant's always a public service. We serve the public.
Right.
Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I wanted the clarification so that I understand it right. I guess it's a contradiction of the notion that it's marketing for the agency or just, it's marketing about the grant, the scope of the grant, who has access and how it'll be distributed, correct? And it's for people, not only the direct recipients, but the agency staff across agencies so that they know how to advise clients, whether it's private or public. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion on the motion? Alderman Beatty, your microphone is on. If there's no other discussion, I'll bring it to a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is 8E, Alderman Sutton.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approves the attached allocation transfer number 1, the vehicle acquisition program.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Sutton.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the mayor, I just was going to ask if you could clarify why doing it in this manner is preferable to yearly budgeting for these items.
So, Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Sutton, back 15-plus years ago, all of our vehicles were purchased through the operating budget. There was a program called the Rolling Stock Program that was a line item in the operating budget that the Alderman considered. At one point, most of those vehicles were taken off, and again, before my time, at least as part of the administration, made the decision to reserve that at the end of the fiscal year to see how much of a cushion was left over so that some decisions could be made between whether or not to fund vehicles through city money or grant money. And there are other considerations too. Basically, how much could be afforded each year could be made after all the evidence was in, not having to guess as to what type of finances the city would have in the following fiscal year. So the rolling stock program was converted to the vehicle acquisition program for public works vehicles, for police and some fire administrative vehicles. More recently, we started funding, within the last couple of years, we started funding the police cruisers out of the vehicle acquisition program. Again, just because it allowed us to see the entire field as opposed to have to guess as to our finances for the next fiscal year. We knew exactly how much money that we had in a surplus, or approximately how much money that we had in reserves, and we could again make a more educated decision. I think that it's worked well. It's allowed us to fund our needs for our vehicles and our equipment, and at the same time see what type of grants were available at the end of the state cycle, where the state is usually slower, at least as of recently, has been slower to enact a budget than the city of Milford has been. And if you see the program in front of you, most of the vehicles are, that's not true, approximately half of the vehicles are funded this year through the TAR money, the Town Aid Road money. And the Town Aid Road money can only fund vehicles and equipment that work to maintain city roads or city streets. So we are funding things like plow trucks that maintain city streets out of the TAR money grants, as opposed to through the allocation transfer. Things like the garbage recycling truck or solid waste vehicle, that does not maintain a city street, so we cannot fund that through grant money. We are funding that public works vehicle through an allocation transfer, as we're funding, a fire department administrative vehicle and police cruisers. I don't know if that provides enough background. Peter Aradisi may have more historical information than I about why there was that transition, 15 plus years ago for the rolling stock program versus the vehicle acquisition program.
Again, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the mayor and Peter, it does appear to me that doing it in this manner is a more economical and efficient way than providing these items in the as line items for each department. Is that fair to say?
They have to be funded one way or the other. This does allow us to know exactly how much money is available before we fund it, as opposed to speculating as much. It also allows us a better sense of what type of state grants are going to be eligible for funding these vehicles too. So it just gives us a little bit more insight versus the past way that we've gone about doing it.
Any more discussion on the motion? Did you have your hand up, Alderman Ferrante? See, last time I missed you. Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Winsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the mayor. So this vehicle acquisition fund, you said it has a cushion, is that right?
I said that the vehicle acquisition program, we do it we have recently traditionally done it after the end of the fiscal year so that we know how much of a cushion the city has or how much of a surplus, or approximately how much of a surplus the city ends the fiscal year with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you, the surplus. So how does that surplus grow? How do we end up with a surplus?
At the end of the fiscal year, we spend less than we allocate.
Okay, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chairman.
And there's other
So
ways to grow the surplus too. You know, sometimes I guess some municipalities have the sale of city assets or town assets, grants that are received that are unrestricted, grants that are received where we're able to reconcile past money spent with grant money. There's a whole host of ways to grow the surplus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you, I know when we had our budgeting discussions, we discussed a number of city positions that were accounted for in the budget and budgeted for, but unfilled. Would those positions that were budgeted for but not filled, would those go towards a surplus?
Absolutely. Every year in every municipality, you know, across Connecticut and the nation, there are going to be requirements, retirements. There are going to be positions where there is some lag time between a person exiting that position and a employer filling that, where there's going to generally be some type of surplus. Sometimes that surplus in the wage accounts gets shifted over and we hire seasonal temporary employees, or we backfill that through overtime that existing employees take over. But certainly in any type of annual budget, whether it's Milford or any other town or city, there's going to be some surplus that's associated with unfilled positions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, then it's safe to say that, say the some positions in the Public Works Department that were budgeted for but unfilled, some of that money could potentially be going to purchasing recycling trucks. And if that's the case, what happens when those positions are filled? Will we not have money for the vehicle acquisition fund?
No, at the end of the fiscal year, we take a look to see how much of a surplus we have, and based on that surplus, we look to see how much money we can spend on a whole host of things. As you know, right now, we have a very healthy rainy day fund balance. You know, that is approximately 3 to 4 times the amount that our local policies encourage. You know, we have a rainy day fund that is the envy of all of our surrounding towns. We have maintained that rainy day fund through conservative, stable practices of budgeting. Part of that is through open positions, but again, any town or city incurs those savings. Some towns or city that have those savings are still scrambling at the end of the year to keep their budget in the black. There, you know, are a lot of towns and cities, you know, even ones that are directly adjacent to us that operate in the red each year. Milford has enjoyed the stability because we've, you know, carefully scrutinized where we are throughout the fiscal year. I know that this board receives updates on a monthly basis and a quarterly basis to make sure that, you know, you're providing the oversight for the finance department, for the rest of the administration, so that we remain in the black and have that nice, healthy, comfortable surplus that the bond rating agencies have lauded us for. Again, Milford remains a AAA bond rating municipality, and that is in large part because of the way that our finances are overseen. So again, kudos to the board for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more discussion on the motion? Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I see there's $220,000 earmarked for police cruisers. Can you share with the members of the board how many cruisers we can expect for that dollar amount?
So recently, the police department forwarded me over a quote for 6 cruisers, and I think it was like $207,000. So this would be at least 6 cruisers, is my understanding. Again, that email was about a month old, so I believe it still should be good. Approximately 6.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, through you, Mayor Blake, you indicated that the fire department, sometimes we buy vehicles through grants. How come this fire department, this command vehicle, was not realized through a grant?
So the fire department, the vast majority of their vehicles are apparatus, big, huge fire trucks that cost $500,000, $750,000. The tower truck's over $1 million. And sometimes grants offset those. The reference I made earlier was for a rescue truck, where a portion of the rescue truck was funded through the CDBG program. I think it was a $200,000 piece of apparatus, and approximately half of that was funded through that grant. The other half we funded through local monies. But mostly, the fire department has, a single vehicle or piece of apparatus that could cost us more than this entire vehicle acquisition program combined. So oftentimes, for the fire department vehicles, we bond those. I guess the only ones that we don't really bond are, sometimes we can find a way to fund some of the rescue trucks through local funding, whereas the SUVs, the administrative vehicles, are normally funded out of the vehicle acquisition program. So usually the command vehicles for both police and fire are funded out of the vehicle acquisition program, but other big purchases through the fire department are mostly bonded.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is 8F. Alderman Sutton.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approves the attached memorandum of agreement for 2021 Connecticut Youth Employment Program, CYEP, between the Workforce Alliance and the City of Milford, and to authorize the mayor, city attorney, and health director to take all steps necessary, including signing all documents, to effectuate said agreement.
Second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Giannattasio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Through you, I guess, to Mayor Blake. Mayor Blake, is the city going to be made whole, or are we going to be completely reimbursed through this agreement?
Mr. Chairman, the director of this program is Lisa Straight, who runs our job training program out of our Human Services Department. She is here, but it's my understanding that this is a grant specifically, well, there's 2 grants. There's item G and item H, which are self-contained. I don't think that there's any cost to the city for either one. But Lisa?
Hi, Lisa Straight. That's true, that this summer youth program, it's to fund placement of kids throughout the city. Kids meet income guidelines or have special needs, and we place them in jobs as a work experience.
Just to follow up through you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Lisa. Are these just Milford kids that are being hired?
Yes.
Okay. And who actually hires them? Is it the city of Milford, or is it the Workforce Alliance?
We place them in sites throughout the city. Typically, a lot of the schools take kids, the YMCA, the library, K-9, all Milford sites.
Thank you, thank you.
Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Lisa, for answering those questions for us. Next item on the agenda is agenda item number 8G, Alderman Sutton.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approves the attached contract between the Workplace Incorporated in the City of Milford for the WIOA Youth Program and to authorize the mayor, city attorney, and health director to take all steps necessary, including signing all documents to effectuate said agreement.
Second the motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is item 8H, Alderman Sutton.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approves the attached contract between the Workforce Alliance and the City of Milford for occupational skills training with adult education services to JFES participants and to authorize the mayor, city attorney, and health director to take all steps necessary, including signing all documents to effectuate said agreement.
Second that motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Alderman Beatty, you have your microphone is on. You have a question? Any more discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item agenda is agenda item number 9. There is no new business. We're open under agenda item number 10. There are no budget memo transfers. So we'll move on to agenda item number 11. Moving on to refunds. Alderman Sutton, agenda item 11A.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the attached refunds in the amount of $24,323.59.
Second.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is agenda number 12. Are there any reports from any standing committees? Any standing committee reports? Seeing none. Open under agenda item number 13. Are there any reports from any special committees? No special committee reports. Agenda item number 14. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion has been made to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.